us at the millennial generation, we are literally the get it out the mud generation. Cause we see the baby boomers like,
Yeah.
I'm in the house with moms, and she's like, yeah, all right, go get a job. But I'm like, well, dang, I can't even get the new J's. I see you working every day, but we ain't got no money. We ain't got nothing. So I understand what you're saying, but that don't seem like that work either.
Yeah.
You got on your keys. You got on your keys. Everything you want on top of everything you need, just got on your keys. Nobody could take this, built it from ground up, and nobody could break this. I'm making real moves, when I see it, I want it, I get it. Let's build an empire, baby, I know that you with it. Can't nobody stop this, they can only watch this. It's time to talk life balance, love and marriage, all the trending topics. No off days, come up the hard way. Never no shortcuts, I took the long way. Gotta leave treasure for my kids' pleasure. Every loss been a lesson and an unexpected blessing. Planting seeds showing up, small money growing up, accomplishing my goals, champagne bottle pouring up, name on everything, I'm signing the dotted line. Money been working for me, I'm kicking back on recline. I own it just like the moment, everything I became, my hustle could take the blame, solidify my name. Gotta walk through the rain, gotta go through the pain, you gotta soak up the game, create your own lane, switch gears, never change, level up and gain. You can have everything long as you do one thing, you just gotta own your keys. You just got on your keys.
Okay. What's up, you guys? We're so excited to be back here again, bring you another podcast. I'm your host, Mink, and we have my co-host right here,
Jay Goday, a.k.a. Mr. On Your Keys, y'all, a.k.a. the Monopoly Boss. What's good?
What's good, y'all? What's up?
Well, hey, we got a very, 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 very special guest here today, y'all, and we about to really, really drop some gems. So I hope y'all tune in. We got my man, Mr. Jay Daniels, the CEO of the East Baton Rouge Parish Housing Authority. What's good, Jay?
Hey, man, I'm blessed and highly favored, man. Appreciate the invite. Thank y'all for inviting me.
Most
man.
definitely, most
Thank
definitely,
you for
man.
coming on. We know you're a busy man doing some great things in the community. So
I appreciate that. Humble to hear that. I appreciate that.
Definitely, man. So, y'all, Jay is what I would call like the man. Oh, like for real.
You putting too much pressure on me, man.
Hey,
too much pressure, man.
Hey, and I'm gonna tell you, I don't say that often. I don't use that lightly. But he is definitely somebody that I look to that is inspirational. Somebody that I look up to. Somebody that I see behaviors and habits that I would like to pattern around. So what I say that I'm honored to introduce him. I'm honored for him to be here talking with us today because around the subject matter that we all very passionate about. So I mean, Jay is a father, a husband, a leader. Graduated from Morehouse College.
There it is. The house.
Y'all know they take the pride on that for real. Degree in finance. And he was, I won't get this wrong. You worked on Wall Street?
No.
Interned on Wall Street. One of those.
I interned
in
New York, yeah.
Yeah, so Jay, just to kind of bring y'all, get y'all some color around this. So I'll go in Jay's office, and this was before I had any idea of like how to invest in stocks or what they meant or whatever. But on his TV in his office, it would always be on the stock channel on CNBC.
Yeah.
It would always be on that channel, and he would be very quiet about it. But I was like, man, this dude knows more than what he's leading on. Like. It's like it's a reason why this stays on the channel.
Yeah.
So it brings me to my point, Jay. Like coming from going to Morehouse and then interning on Wall Street, how did you get into the affordable housing sector and with housing authority? What brought you to that point?
Ooh, that's a great question. It goes back to my deep roots growing up in Beaumont, Texas. My dad was an electrician by trade.
Okay.
But he had his own company called Daniels Electric, right? And he wired everybody's house, in Beaumont because he was the only black licensed electrician in Beaumont.
Wow.
So he did everybody's house. So I can say I've been in practically everybody's house, right, in Beaumont. And so he taught me how to read construction plans when I was 4 years old, when he was bidding out jobs, sat me on his lap and pulled out these huge set of plans and taught me architecture, which is how I fell in love with architecture.
Wow.
Right? And so if you look at some of the pictures that I drew back when I was in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they were all front elevations of houses.
Wow.
Because that was part of my passion, because I was, again, that's where peer group is very crucial, right?
Right.
Because I was around my dad. My dad's peer group were the general contractors, the painters, the concrete guys, the architects, right? They were all his friends, and I was always on the construction site. So I fell in love with that industry that way. And so from the time when my dad taught me how to read construction plans, I always wanted to be an architect, right? And so went through high school. My dad's friends was my teacher in architecture. And so I was going to Morehouse on a 3-2 program. You do 3 years at Morehouse, get your math degree, do 2 years, get your architecture degree. And so I was doing an internship my freshman year, and one of the guys came over and said, hey. He's like, come over here. It's like, all right, what's going on? He's like, you really want to be an architect? I was like, yeah, absolutely, man. Since I was a little boy. Yeah, absolutely. He was like, don't. And I was like, what? I was like, man, I was hoping for some more sage advice, right?
Right.
And he said, don't. I was like, man, please explain why. So then he was like, look, man, he said, unless, you own your own architectural firm, man, you're going to be stuck here designing bathrooms just like I am. And the guy was like in his 40s or 50s, right? And completely disgruntled, and so he just totally turned me away from the industry, right? So I said, okay, dive in, tell me why. He was like, if you are a developer, you own the process. You hire guys like me. You hire the architect. You hire all the design guys. You go out and get the financing. You say you are the quarterback.
Yeah.
So at that point, I went back. I changed my major from architecture and changed it to finance.
Okay.
And so that's how I got my finance degree from Morehouse. And at that point, I started interning, with all the different, firms.
But is that because development is all about the finances?
Finance is everything, right?
I was about to get to that. Yeah.
Finance is everything. You have to be able to know the numbers behind it, right?
Yeah.
You have to be able to underwrite a deal, to be able to look at a site and run a quick and dirty, set of numbers in your head. It's like, this may be a great deal. And so he said, you have to understand those numbers. And so I was able to surround myself with companies and individuals that were supportive of my dream all throughout school, doing various internships that taught me that skill set.
And that's interesting because most professionals and even most developers get into the business and don't understand that the development real estate development starts with the numbers.
Yeah.
We'll come up with this beautiful concept, real pretty image and just not even really knowing that that's a fraction of what the actual development is.
Yeah.
So the fact that that's foundational to go even to belabor our conversation, the fact that you had a finance degree, you changed your major to a finance degree because you wanted to go into real estate development. Most minorities don't do that.
Yeah.
Most black business owners don't think from that perspective, which will bring to the point of blacks in real estate development. What is your litmus test of equity when it comes to blacks in the real estate development industry?
Well, obviously, just as an industry, we are completely underrepresented. I mean, you look at the Urban Land Institute's magazine, monthly magazine, and you and attempt to find people of color in there. Out of the thousands of people that are highlighted,
Yeah.
The $1 million project.
right,
Yes.
right. We are completely underrepresented, and I think, some people say, there are some prejudice involved in how you bring up the next generation of developers and professionals. But at the end of the day, I truly believe that in most cases, most people who are in those positions of power, who are running those development companies and other financial companies, they are hiring people that look like them, just because it's a level of comfort, right? And so until, like that guy said, unless you're owning your own, right? If you own your own shop, then you have the ability. I grew up in, my professional career was in Atlanta, to where we saw Egbert Perry, right? And you saw Noel Khalil with Columbia Residential, Egbert with Integral, all grow out of the H.J. Russell shop, right?
Yep.
H.J. Russell was one of the largest black developers, in Atlanta, and general contractor. And it goes back to, if you look at it, there's a photo. If you go back to the Civil Rights Archives, there's a photo with Dr. King. He's sitting on the couch with Robert David Abernathy, Andrew Young, and H.J. Russell. And they're sitting in H.J. Russell's living room, right? And they're discussing civil rights, Because if you talk to those guys, and again, this is one thing, the fabulous thing about living in Atlanta, right, is the fact that these icons were still walking amongst us, right? I would go to the gas station and I would see Andy Young pumping his gas and have a conversation with him, right? And he was just so endearing, of sharing something. It's like, man, how did you navigate this?
Yeah.
Right? Philanthropy, right?
Right.
Time, talent, and resources.
Right. Right.
And so the point I'm making is, if you talk to those guys and they talk about civil rights and their aim, one, they wanted the opportunity to be the best, right? And they realized that economically they could not be the best because the embedded systemic racism that exists in the laws.
Yep.
And civil rights was the opportunity and the tool to open up the economy to everybody, right? And so that was their focus.
Yeah.
And they used civil rights as their tool.
Yeah.
And so you look at it, H.J. Russell was a significant backer and philanthropist behind the civil rights movements as they were having these conversations inside of his living room. H.J. Russell went to critically acclaimed development and general contracting, and then he began to birth. He sowed seeds. He birthed Egbert Perry. In his early 20s, he hired Egbert Perry to be his chief operating officer at the age of 24, right? To run his company. And he said, the only thing the only instruction is just don't run my company. Don't make us go broke. Right? And so here it is. He's giving the keys over to Egbert Perry at the age of 24, giving them opportunity, right? Same thing with Noel Khalil, Columbia Residential. If you look at some of the stuff that was done in New Orleans post-Katrina, that was Noel Khalil, Columbia Residential, right? Who also worked for H.J. Russell, who ran the home building section of H.J. Russell. So then it goes back to what? H.J. Russell hired people within his community, right? He gave them an opportunity to do something, and you look at both of those companies and everybody else. I mean, that's just two distinct stories, right? There are many more about people who were birthed out of that man and out of that institution. And so, to my point, people give opportunity most of the time with the people they're surrounded by. And we have to be more intentional about those efforts, right?
Well, okay, so I feel that, right?
Right.
But I feel like in our community there's a trust factor because we can have the the philanthropy, we can want to do it, but then it's like, do I trust you enough to do this? Am I gonna actually allow you to take my vision or my company and actually, like you said, don't ruin my company, but I'm gonna let you run it. Yeah. But nowadays, I don't think that would happen. I don't.
Well, so what I would think, and some would say that there's still a level of Jim Crow that exists in a form of economics when it comes to black economics, because when we talk about real estate development, we're talking about one of the biggest industries that is one of the biggest wealth tracks for the individuals in the sector. But the biggest barrier for people of color is access to capital. And the barrier with access to capital is underwriting criteria, is your experience, etc. Then there's an education gap. Go back to Jay with a finance degree. So if I'm a white guy and I may not have a finance degree, but I grew up in a house where wealth was taught. I grew up in an environment where finances were taught. So now I'm going into my career, even though I may not even have a degree at all, but because I understand some level of money, then I can actually take this into this industry, opposed to my counterpart that may have all the experience or may have all of the knowledge, but have not led with the numbers. There's a gap there. And I think the gap usually comes through the education component of economics and finance. From my knowledge and what I've grown to learn, that's another form of Jim Crow.
You hit the nail on the head. It's education.
Yeah.
I mean, education is the pathway out of poverty, right? And so we have to be able to continually, impress upon whoever, the powers that be, even with our own community. It all starts with education, right? Because if I know better, I can do better, right?
Exactly.
If I know better, I can do better. And it starts with education. And then once you marry the education with exposure and then experience,
Yes. Exactly.
then you'll start seeing the outcomes in which our community has produced in the past.
So Jay, let me ask you about affordable housing. Like, tell us exactly, what is affordable housing?
Affordable housing is what everybody lives in, right?
Right.
Because whether you're a homeowner or whether you rent, we all live in something that we can afford, right? Right?
Right. Or we should be able to afford.
Right. And
Right.
so the real issue is the unaffordability that exists
Yes.
in our
Right.
communities,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so just like you talk about education, Jay, when that bank underwrites you, he's going to make sure that that you're not paying more than 30% of your income towards your housing,
Yeah.
right? Well, there are some there are some families within our communities that are paying 50 and 60% of their income to housing, and that's unaffordable because what else do you have
Yeah.
to pay after that? You still got child care. I have 4 kids, so
Yeah.
so I know how expensive child care
Right.
is, right? Especially the baby,
Yeah.
150 to 200 a week.
Yes.
But you're only making minimum wage, which means that something has to, something's going to fall through the cracks. You don't have enough disposable income to have a quality of life in which a working person who works 40 hours out of a week should be deserving of. There should be some dignity involved
Yeah.
in life, right? A quality of life. And so when we talk about affordable housing, obviously, people realize that unless there is a push from the public and private sector to address that, then you're not going to get some of the outcomes. And so back in 1986, Ronald Reagan, a Republican administration, we all know Ronald Reagan, he created the tax credit program, right, in which incentivized the private sector to invest in affordable housing. And so all it is its ability to competitively secure equity for deals, and in turn for that equity, you buy down the cost of a rent for families, right? Because I gave you some equity, which means that your debt is lower.
Yes.
And because your debt is lower, you can lower your rents as
Right.
well.
Yes.
And that's tax credits in a nutshell. And so in that particular space, we're obviously underrepresented, and there's a tier to it, right? There are the lawyers, there are the developers, there are the finance people that are involved, and then ultimately when you get down to the people who are living it as people who don't have the same opportunities that we have, right? Because, they are income constrained. They're, in many cases, they're poverty stricken. But I think if you look at it going forward, the opportunity is allowing those individuals to have a safe and quality place to live, but marry that with opportunities that allow them to lead out of poverty. And that's what sometimes you see lacking in the execution of affordable housing, which why you see such poor communities just continually go down, and which is why a lot of people just have they have a stigma about it, right?
Yeah.
Because someone has just created some type of sticks and bricks product and placed the people there. In many cases, they'll place it out in the middle of nowhere, right, without any access to goods and services and education and recreation and jobs, and they're left there to be on their own devices, right? Instead of being very intentional and placing those communities in high opportunity areas that have all of those things that increases the quality of life, so they do have a pathway out of poverty. And so what has failed us on the affordable housing side, which is why we suffer from a perceptional issue, right, when we talk about affordable housing, is because in many cases it hasn't been done well. And so to your point, we as an organization and many other well-intentioned individuals and companies, we take a different approach to how we implement affordable housing. It goes back to the people that grew up around in the industry when you talk about the Egbert Perrys and the Noel Khalils and all the other intentional developers that understood the quality of life issues behind affordable housing. Again, that's when you start to see the outcomes that are better for our community.
And I'm glad you said that, Jay, because I want to speak to that. One of the things that I was very impressed with was Jay's organization. They have a bell in their office, because in most cases you don't see housing authorities that develop a home ownership component. a lot of times the stigma, and this is something that I heard Jay talk about before, about the language of affordable housing, changing the vernacular of the way we talk about it, because that in turn changes the way that people represent themselves in that sector, right? So Jay has a bell for the people that live in affordable housing, our residents. When they reach the level so they're able to purchase their home, they come and they ring the bell. So this is a transition out of affordable housing to home ownership.
It's temporary. It's
temporary.
temporary assistance.
It's temporary.
Move you up and out.
And it brought me to a point when I was reading a story about 3 generations of ladies that grew up in an affordable housing sector. The grandmother, the daughter, and then the granddaughter. So, but they never knew any different. They didn't get an education component to say, well, there's a different side. You know, yes, this is comfortable for me, but there's another side to where you're not just living comfortable, but now you're generating wealth as well.
That's right.
So the vernacular to change, like, and to your point, to say, this wasn't meant to be permanent.
That's right.
It's meant for to help you get to another level of your life, and then now you continue to grow from that point. So that was huge to me. You know, to be able to see, you know, seeing videos and be able to see these people coming and ringing these bells, that they're transitioning from this part of their life.
Can't wait to see you on the other side when
to
you're ringing
home
that
ownership.
bell. That's right.
You know, and it brought to the question of, so many people want to know, can I be on Section 8 and build wealth?
Yeah, and you can, and so our housing choice vouchers allows us to do just that. And so we put out close to $30 to $32 million annually within this area to our local landlords. We have about 1,200 landlords that we partner with, and they help provide quality housing for our families. And so when you look at the opportunity that's created out of that, there's a portion of that as we identify, because then I tell you a specific strategy that we utilize. There are families that we only contribute possibly $100 each month to their subsidizing or investing in their rent, which means that at the end of the day, you really don't need us, right?
Yeah.
Because it's income tiered, right?
Right.
It'll be different if we are investing $900 a month in your rent, but if we're only investing $100, then you really don't need us, right? That's a dinner
So at that
out.
point, it's a mindset shift.
It's a mindset shift,
Right.
In which you know, we instructed our team to go back, identify those families, and bring them in and have a conversation, and say, you know what, you really don't need us, and it's time.
Right.
And it's time. It's like, you know, you've been on it for, you know, this amount of years. You can really create some wealth by transitioning to home ownership. Well, how do I do that? And that's where the education component comes in, right?
Yes.
Well, let me show you how.
Yeah.
And we have great partners in the Louisiana Housing Corporation. Josh Hollins is a new executive director. We're excited about having him. He's expressed his continued support of what we're doing.
Yeah, shout out to Josh.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Josh
he has
Hollins.
a finance background.
Yeah, that's right.
See?
That's right. That's right.
Now y'all hearing that? You know, this education component is real.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things that we got this for a later show, but the education, mandating education, financial education in the school system, you know, is huge.
Yeah.
Because it changes the demographic, the landscape of everything that we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
You know, but going back to philanthropy, you know, like me and her had a conversation a couple weeks back. Like I literally had an epiphany thinking about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and to think about our generation as millennials. We're a microwavable generation, right? Everything has to happen within a certain time, and if it doesn't, I'm about to be on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Now I go back to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, because the work that they did to change the laws of Jim Crow, they were going to jail, they was getting beaten, they was getting spit on, the whole situation.
Sacrifice.
Right.
But they knew that the work that they were doing, potentially they weren't going to live to see it come to fruition.
Yeah.
So that in turn said, this ain't about me.
Jay, it's funny you should say that. So the Fair Housing Act was executed April 11th, 1968.
Oh, I was about to say 60.
Dr. King was assassinated April 4th, 1968. And LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, used that as an opportunity to push that legislation through several days after Dr. King's death.
Wow.
Because he recognized what this man has sacrificed, right? Gave his life for the movement,
Yes.
right? And so to your point, all those individuals who played an integral component into where we are today, right? We're
Right.
only able to sit here
Right.
because
Right.
we're standing on their shoulders, right?
Real
And
talk.
yeah,
Like,
it's
for real.
reality, right?
Yeah.
It's
It is.
reality.
That's
It's
real.
reality.
Yeah.
And because of their sacrifices, days later, LBJ was able to pass that legislation several days after his death. To your point,
Yeah.
you know,
So when I'm thinking about these conversations that we have, me and you have multiple conversations
Yeah.
in joy and frustration
Yeah.
and just, like we we run it. And it came to me because it said back to that word philanthropy, you got to be okay with the work that we're doing today if we don't live to see it come to fruition, but we still got to do the work.
that's right.
So and that's a mindset shift, especially as for somebody like me in the millennial generation that's used to that grew up in that mindset of like, nah, you got to get it, and you got to finesse it in a way to where you making sure that you're gonna benefit from whatever it is you're doing
Yeah.
in some
Yeah.
form or fashion. So the mindset shift was so real because I'm like, with the things that you're working on, the things that you're putting out there, you may not live to see it.
That's right.
And it was a moment that I sat there and I said, but I'm all right with that.
Yeah, we have to be.
You got to be.
Right. Because there was others that did it for us, right?
Exactly.
We come from a lineage of survivors.
Exactly.
Right? A lineage of survivors.
Yeah.
And we can trace it all the way back, across the pond. Because of their sacrifice, we can be here today.
So Jay, a lot of our listeners, they span from business owners, investors, just people looking to get into certain types of passive income,
Yeah.
from all walks of life, right? And I want you to identify like 3 keys that somebody that may be in affordable housing and may be have home vouchers, and thinking about how can I do what they're talking about? What's three pivotal points to where they are now? How can they start generating wealth to utilize this temporary situation and move from that point to start getting on the track to generating wealth?
I think it starts with changing your mindset. You talked about the microwave mentality and understanding sacrifice, because there are a lot of times, we love material things as a people, right?
Yeah, we do.
And so sometimes you just have to be able to have the mindset, and in many cases, retrain yourself
Yeah.
to say, you know what, I don't need that.
Right.
I got a closet full of clothes, man.
Yeah.
I don't need that right now.
Yeah.
But I can save that extra $100, because at some point I want to put some money aside so I can get that down payment.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
we have to change our mindset, because I tell people all the time, when you're dealing with real estate, you're really putting yourself in a different position
Yes.
from a generational standpoint.
Yeah.
And that's what we really have to emphasize,
Yeah.
to our families who are seeking to build wealth. It is a way,
Yeah.
out of poverty, but they have to be taught that.
Yes.
Right.
Ownership
They have to be
opens
taught
doors.
that, and we have to show more examples
Yes.
of
Yeah.
that, which is
Yeah.
why on a website, which is why we show people, ringing that bell, because
Yeah.
it's like, how's this person get to ring the bell?
Yeah.
Well, let me show you how.
Yeah.
Right. Let me show you how, and really understanding, to your point, it's really about breaking generational cycles as well. And having them seeing a better life than what they already have. It's like, you know what, your grandmother did the best she could. She probably wasn't given the best opportunity. She went to this underperforming public school. She possibly had to drop out to take care of y'all.
Yeah.
There are a whole bunch of social issues
Yeah.
that kind of underlie all
Yeah.
this. But grandma did the best for you, right?
Yeah.
Right? And so now, the way you pay honor and respect to your grandmothers, get to the next level.
Yeah.
And I want to show you how you can get to the next level.
Yeah.
So and I may sound like I'm being redundant over
you
and over and
don't.
over
No,
again,
you don't.
but it's really education. And
Yes,
each one
it
has to
is.
teach one.
It is.
Each one has to teach one.
It is. It's that's spot on, and it's funny you say that because I talk about the generational shift a lot. And you mentioned, we're talking about we can go back literally 3 generations that won't even span to 100 years. I had my first kid at 14. My mom is 69. So I'm 34. So we're talking about my mom who went to school and to college in the 70s. I think the 70s. She went to McNeese, where when they were just allowing black people to come in there, and she was one of the few,
Yeah.
and dealt with a whole
It's a tough environment, man.
yeah, a whole gamut of things.
She's traumatized because
But then
of that.
came from a family of six, 5 sisters, a father that was in the military, gone most of the time, and a mother that didn't have any skills. You know, just took care of the home, didn't have any opportunity. So guess what she taught her? Well, when you leave here, you need to go out to school and you need to create some opportunity.
Get a career.
Get a career.
Yeah.
So then in turn, my mom taught me, even though she was an entrepreneur, that's all I saw growing up. You don't need to be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
You need to go to school and get a job because it's safe,
Yep.
it's secure. And then us at the millennial generation, we are literally the get it out the mud generation. Cause we see the baby boomers like, I'm in the house with mom, and she's like, yeah, all right, you know, go get a job. But I'm like, well, dang, I can't even get the new J's. I see you working every day, but we ain't got no money. We ain't got nothing. So I understand what you're saying, but that don't seem like that work either. You know?
I heard my boy over here tell me I can do this fast.
I mean, I'm seeing something totally different. So we become the generation to where we get it out. We really legit getting it out the mud, and but we compensating for the things that we lack.
Yeah.
Growing up.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like me and my sister had an extreme shoe fetish because we could never get them.
Yeah.
So at the time came to get them, went crazy. Didn't matter if you had the money or not.
Yeah.
You know, so the trajectory of financial education and wealth. My first lesson on credit was, boy, if you get a credit card and you run it up, make sure you pay the minimum balance. Totally wrong. But it was wrong, but it wasn't wrong in the lesson because that was a lesson she knew.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So fast forward up until I take these habits into my adult life. And then I marry a woman who came up from a totally different situation. Grew up in a frugal home. They saving money.
Yep.
So we get together and we just like all in water. I'm spending what I make. She trying to save it. I'm like,
I'ma get it back.
We may not get it again, or I lost it. I can get it again.
No.
Look at God. That's called balance, though. That's called balance, man.
You know,
Good thing you married somebody like just like you, right? Right?
I know,
Probably
right?
wouldn't be having this conversation
Not
on
at
this
all.
podcast.
Not at all.
Talking about wealth.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
true though.
balance.
That's true.
Yeah.
So it's that going back to the education piece is so critical. And to me, it's like it gets frustrating because you like these politicians, these legislators, they with the swipe of a pen can make a decision that can change
Ooh,
everything
Yeah.
that we're talking about. That can change the next 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
That we're not gonna live to see. Well, we will still be here, but they can change
It
the
will have
trajectory
generational impact.
Right.
Generational impact.
Generational
with
impact.
one decision, right?
One decision.
But that if you're growing up in an environment that was spanning over 40, 50, 60 years and you've never been taught one thing about money, then what do you expect?
Yeah.
You expect poverty.
Yeah.
You expect abortion.
Yeah.
You expect blight. You expect prostitution. You expect
Drug,
marginalization. You expect drug addiction, right?
That's right.
Homelessness.
It's
Yeah.
never been taught.
Yeah.
One of my mentees, you know, call him one of my little young gunners, taught me something that even still to this day, it was a simplicity of words that he said that was weird coming from an 18-year-old. And even with all of the education that I did, the research, I still didn't look at it in that way. He said, I'm practicing to tell myself when I want to buy something, if I can't buy it twice, then I don't need it. I said, wow.
Deep.
Yeah, see, they even know. For real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said, if I can't buy it twice, then I don't need it. Because most households, like you said, most households can find an additional $100 to $200, sometimes $300. Sometimes 50% of what they're making, they can
When
find
Easter and
Yeah.
Christmas come
in
around.
the
for real.
in
No,
their
seriously, yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
only because their financial habits that
Yeah.
haven't taught them to delay gratification. Yeah,
I know it's deep.
yeah.
That's real.
It's real.
Yeah, that's real.
It's real.
I remember I just before we wrap up, my mom and my dad were different. And so my mom was spend everything, but my dad was different. And it's so funny. The reason why I always say this, I make jokes about Easter and Christmas and all this kind of stuff because in my family, they would go broke to make sure that we had Easter dresses and to make sure that Christmas was Christmas. I mean, we growing up, me and my sisters, we really had some great Christmases, you know. Until my parents had to file bankrupt because of my dad. So it's just so funny to me to hear like us really talk about this stuff, which I mean, we know about this stuff, but it's like to think about it even in your family, you know, like it was so many generations because even now some of my aunts and my sisters, you know, carry the same things.
Yeah.
The same exact things, you know?
Yeah.
And they know. So sometimes even when you have the education, when you know better, you're supposed to do better. But sometimes, if you don't have that mindset shift, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's a certain dynamic of education.
Well,
because
yeah, you're right.
I have some very educated people in my family.
Yeah.
But it didn't change the generational habit of spending. Because it was a point to where I had a very large paycheck and was still living paycheck to paycheck. So people think that income means you won't have to, because my mindset was, well, I just need to make more money.
Right.
But I make more money and then I get more debt.
Yeah.
Or you spend more money.
Yeah.
But because the financial component is not there to say, no, if you have $5,000 of debt and at one point you was only making $6,000, then you increase to $10,000. That don't mean increase your debt to $7,000.
Right.
That means keep your debt right there.
Yeah.
And continue to grow.
That's right.
You know, so, but again, we could talk about this for hours and hours.
I want to ask Jay something. I want to ask him 2 questions.
Go ahead.
Okay? Because I don't know how much time we have left. Okay, so the first question is, being that, you know, you have a very extensive, you know, financial background, right? What is like one of the biggest things that you've learned or one of the keys that you've learned, you know, with having a financial background, even for you to be able to put into your personal life?
So I would say partnership. So I started my development firm right out of school. When I graduated in I bought my first piece of property in 1997, right? And up until that point, I had, because of my internships, right, that the education and experience, right, and being exposed, I began to acquire significant land holdings in the periphery neighborhoods of downtown Atlanta, right?
Wow. Okay.
And I did so in very creative ways. The only downfall of that in the creation of all that wealth is I was my only partner.
Yeah.
Right? Right. Me and the bank. So I just call it so me and the bank was our only partner. I didn't have
That's
any
a
other
good partner, though.
Yeah, that's a good partner.
Yeah,
That's a good partner. That's a good partner. Right? And majority of it I financed myself, and then, you know, the other third or fourth, you know, was bank financing. But my point being, when the unfortunate events of the 2008 recession hit, you know, I was left holding the bag all by myself. And so I lost a significant portion of my portfolio, you know, even though, and what I didn't lose was what was not levered without any debt. So the stuff that I financed myself.
Right.
But I think about, and that was a young man. I wouldn't say he was young. I call him young. He was in his 60s. He said, man, where your partners at, man? He said, man, because, you know, when you lose all this, you're going to lose it. I mean, it's going to be you.
Yeah.
I said, man, I'll be all right, man.
Yeah,
I'll be all right.
yeah.
I'll be all right. But he was right, you know, because what I didn't realize is this was like, when 2008 came around, that was his 4th recession.
Wow.
Right? He was old school.
Oh, wow.
Right?
So the wisdom.
It was the
Yeah.
wisdom.
He was giving you the
He
cheat
was
code.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
some
wasn't,
experience,
but
some
by that time it was done.
Right.
It was done. It was baked.
Wow.
It was
Yeah.
baked, and it informed me in future investment decisions, you know, going forward after 2008. And so to your point, you know, if you know, if I would go back and tell my 1997 self, you know, what would you do? I would say take on more partners. That way you share the risk and you spread the risk. It's a diversity mechanism and strategy when you make investments. And so you mentioned something earlier about trust and partnership.
Yeah.
Part of that was born out of not wanting to partner with anybody because I didn't want to introduce the trust factor, right? Because it's like, man, if something goes wrong, then, you know, I'm gonna be battling with him in court or he or she in court.
Yeah.
But we have to take a different approach. Is let the lawyers work out the risk in
I
a
say
document.
this all the time, Jay. I say
Hey,
this all
You
the
know?
time.
but hey,
yeah.
it goes back to the point.
It's the education, right?
Education, exposure.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah.
they don't even have to talk to each other. They don't.
Yeah.
My attorney going to call your attorney.
Yeah.
And we'll see each other on the golf court.
That's it. That's
I
it.
like that.
That's it.
For
Even
real.
though I don't know how to play
We can
golf,
mitigate
but,
risk
yeah.
in documents and not introduce the personal aspects to things, right?
I just don't want to.
And we-
This conversation.
And it's
is so
uncomfortable for
good.
some people, right?
Yeah,
is.
it is.
It
Yeah, it
is.
is.
You know?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is.
It's uncomfortable for
It
some
is,
people.
and again, it's such just to lean on it, you know, so much because again, we are fighting against over 400 and something, almost 500 years of oppression,
Oh,
of shifting the
gosh.
mindset.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things I had talked to somebody about, it literally could take double the amount of time. That's just like if you're in a marriage that you've been abused
Yeah.
Oh,
for
yeah.
25 years.
Mhm.
If you get out of that relationship, it could almost take you an additional 25 years to
That's
heal.
true. Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Therapists say
Yeah.
that.
You
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So we're talking about 400 years of slavery, 14 years of Reconstruction,
I don't
another,
know. Don't
I
know
think,
either.
what,
And then
50 years of
Jim
Jim
Crow.
Crow.
Yeah.
And now we're in 2022, and we're still talking about the inequities of housing, of development.
Same thing
of
we're talking about for the
business.
last 50 years.
So
That's what-
the same thing, right? Because
But you just said the stroke of a pen, though. You literally just said
The stroke of a pen. The stroke of a pen. Because the thing about it though, as when slaves were being slaves, the owners, they were business owners.
Yeah, they was entrepreneurs.
They were practicing commodity trading at that point. So to my point in saying this before we
yeah,
wrap
because
up
we got to wrap. Yeah.
is we've been behind the curve.
Yeah.
Even to today, as affluent as of a people that we are in certain aspects, still behind. It's still certain levels that's not equitable, and the biggest component of that comes with housing and access to capital.
Yeah. That's it. And the education component.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't negate that. Like that
Right.
has to be. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Because if you're not educated, then you can't even implement the other things.
Right.
You know. So, but we're gonna wrap, y'all. I did have another question for Jay. I really want to ask this question.
Go ahead,
Do I
answer
have
real
time?
quick.
Okay.
Answer real quick.
Go ahead.
So y'all, I have to ask this question because y'all gonna go research Jay Daniels because I'm telling y'all need to go research for real. But so Jay, okay. So because we know all of these great things that you're doing and that you have done, and your experience and your education, you know, I want to know, you know, what are your plans for retirement?
It's a good question.
And I know you're young, so I know that
I
you
am
know-
young. Don't push.
Yeah.
Don't push me out the door yet. She's already trying to retire me, man. Like,
know.
geez.
No,
I mean,
I'm
this.
not, but I'm
You have somebody in the wheelchair for me to usher me out. I'm not ready to sit down yet,
know.
Mink. But if I retire and when I do,
okay.
I'm really going to turn my focus and attention to philanthropy.
Okay.
You know, that's time, talent, and resources. And so there are certain things that I'm passionate about. That I truly believe, you know, given the trajectory that we're on, you know, myself and my family, and obviously, you know, the relationships, you know, that I've been able to foster and curate, you know, in my life, I believe is really going to position me to really be influential in some spaces in which I'm passionate about.
Wow. So, what are some of those things you're passionate about?
Obviously,
you don't have to say everything, but just maybe one.
obviously education,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Education, you know, making sure that every child has the same opportunity that I have had, right?
Yes. Wow.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't get here by myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? There's family, there's community, there are friends.
Yeah.
There are educational institutions. You know, Morehouse. I mean,
Right.
Beaumont made me, right?
Yeah.
But Morehouse molded me,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Which means that my family passed me off to the next institution, to the next peer group and construct, you know, to get me on to the next level.
Wow.
And so I want to ensure that all the children, especially the families in which we serve every single day, right? Because those kids, they were me, right? You know, I was having a conversation with my friend one time, and people think we were rich just because I had a mom and daddy in the house. My daddy worked at the plant, and my mom was a teacher, so that made us rich in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I realized not until we got older that some of my friends didn't have the same resources that I had, but they were still my partners, right?
Right. You didn't
Right.
know any
I didn't know
different.
any better, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like we grow up together, play
Yeah.
football together. It's like my clothes is your clothes,
Yeah.
right? We all riding home, and can I ride on with your mama? Can your mama drop me off?
Yeah.
You know, it's community,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so what they showed is that we have an ability as a community to help each other, and I think sometimes we forget that.
Yeah.
We forget that members of our community do not have the same access to
Yep.
resources.
Even
Yeah.
if we live in the same.
Even if we live in the same neighborhood, live in the same area. And I know we got to wrap, but I can remember my football coach, Mr. Hebert. He had his son went on to play football on different levels, but Mr. Hebert used to pick us up in his station wagon, gray station wagon, and pick up all the kids from their house, right? Take them to practice and drop everybody off.
Just talk
And they
about
lived
this.
all over the city. But Mr. Hebert was the head football coach. He picked up all his players and dropped us all back off. That was community. That's philanthropy, right? We talk
Yeah.
about time, talent, possessions, right?
Right.
Right?
Right.
He did.
Now
he,
we
he-
got coaches that don't even wait until the kids get picked up and they gone. I'm just
Right.
saying.
No,
Right.
that's
I'm
real.
just
No,
saying, you know.
seriously.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So we talk about the next level of my life. I want to truly have the ability to give back what the community has given and poured into me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep. And we really do we really do at this time, it's so much that's happening. We really do have to remember where we come from, because when we remember where we come from, then we put value on things and we're able to value each other more.
Yeah.
Because, just like y'all said earlier, like we're really living off the work that was done, that people bled,
That's right.
died, gave their life on, and some of us, we don't even respect that.
Right.
And it's really time for us to go back to that. I really do feel that way because it's so much that's happening, within our community every single day. And it affects us all. It
Absolutely.
really does. So we're going to wrap, y'all. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Jay, for being here.
Thank you. I
We really
appreciate it. Thank
appreciate
you for
for just
inviting me.
dropping all this knowledge.
Yes,
Y'all,
for sure.
these black men, look, they gave y'all some real stuff today, because I just sat over here. But thank you guys for tuning in. Y'all already know how to find us at On Your Keys on Instagram, and the Monopoly Boss on Instagram, and the Investor Queen. Thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.
Peace.
What time is it?
2:55.
Oh, man, I thought we were way over. Man, we
we
could have
good.
talked a little bit. Well, I was just listening.
We
Y'all,
gotta
I
get,
had
the lady
chill
we
bumps.
about to have on at 3:30. We're doing it virtual, but she